Hello, I'm the casual historian, and this is my first video making, so I'd just like to introduce myself. So, I just like to talk about history, religion, that kind of stuff, especially Buddhism. That's my religion, by the way, Vajrayana Buddhism, specifically. Anyway, so, today's topic is going to mainly be around, the history of Buddhism. I'll just do that. So it'll probably be a shorter video, just like a bite-sized one. I don't really know how I'm going to do things on this channel, but this is how I'm going to do it. So basically, as most of you think, it was founded by the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, but there's actually some evidence that it kind of wasn't, because in traditional Buddhist teachings, there have been Buddhists that have preceded Shakyamuni, Siddhartha Gautama, for years and years and years, and there's been lots of them, like loads, but there's been a specific amount in our world, and there has been some evidence for the ones that have preceded Gautama Buddha, sort of like with Jains and their Tirthankars. Because even though most people might say Mahavira found it, there is evidence for some of the Tinkaras that came before him. And there is some evidence for the Buddha that came before the Buddha, which was Kasyapa Buddha, or just Kassapa Buddha. There is some evidence there, but most people just say it was founded by Siddhartha Gautama. And most people probably know the story of the Buddha. Basically, he was born as a prince, and then he left. And once he left on a trip, and he saw many, many, many people. And he saw death and suffering, which was just extremely disheartening for him, because he thought everything was okay. So he left the palace and became an ascetic, and he followed extreme asceticism and starved himself. But then he realised he shouldn't be starving himself and found a middle way. And yes, I know I'm explaining this in a very casual, simplified way, but I don't really want to talk about the actual founding. I want to talk about the spread, kind of, today. And it's my first video, I'm not really used to this stuff. Anyway, basically, so he left. So he founded Buddhism and became enlightened, and he would live until he was 80 when he died of undercooked pork, food poisoning. But basically, Buddhism was spread, and there was lots of ancient early schools that came out, all which were different, like sort of like a big schism in a way, like not really, like a schism, I think you would say. But one of the early schools was the Pudgalavada school, which was founded by Vatisipura, and this school actually survived for a very, very long time, very influential, but they actually had a big heresy, which was that they believed in a person, which actually was kind of getting into the Hindu Atman stuff. They claimed it wasn't Atman, and it was still going by the properties of Anatta, but they just weren't really doing it. And before you say, and I'd just like to mention, I believe personally in the Shentong belief, which some people will say that is an Atman, but no, this isn't like the Pugladvada belief of the person. Shentong is a bit more complicated, and I'll explain about that later. But basically, it spread first with the early schools, and most of the early schools became what we know as Theravada, which is also sometimes called Hinayana. That's said to be a bit derogatory due to its nature. But basically, because Hinayana means lesser way or lesser vehicle, but basically, then some schools were formed into Mahayana, which was actually original kind of heretical, because most people, they assume Buddhism is just atheistic religion that people can practice alongside other religions, which you kind of can, but you can't really. But basically, Mahayana basically schismed off, and today Mahayana is still alive. They're one of the main three branches that have loads of little branches inside. They're like the main one, like the Chinese one, Japanese, in that kind of area, and they have lots of deities, and I know deity is the wrong term, but I'm not going to explain that now. And then, out of Mahayana came Vajrayana, which actually originated in northern India, and it's split off into two. One went into Tibet and founded Tibetan Buddhism, which is mine, and then the other one went into China, and then eventually Japan. and founded the schools like the Xi'an school in China and the Shingon school in Japan. And and I know Tibetan Buddhism is like the face of Vajrayana, but they're not the only ones. Shingon and Xi'an are also very prominent. And yes, I know Tendai is semi-esoteric, but not really, like fully, like Shingon. They sort of combine exoteric and esoteric teachings. Oh yeah, I just wanted to confirm, if I get anything wrong, please let me know in the comments, because I don't want to get things wrong. But basically, so Vajrayana was mainly pioneered by Mahasiddhas, which was said to be people who cultivated siddhis, or, well, the proper pronunciation, siddhis, which basically are like mystical powers. And yeah, I am a Vajrayana Buddhist, so I do believe in esoteric, magical, mystical stuff. But, like, I'm still kind of debating about Mahasiddhas. Like, yeah, we do have actually some evidence of rainbow bodies, like there are some photos. But, like, I don't know, man. It could have been high spiritual attainment. But basically, this was the main founding thing. And this sort of developed around these Mahasiddhas. And basically, these Mahasiddhas would found sort of Tibetan Buddhism. Like, Mahasiddhas wouldn't really actually teach the people that would become shinings. Like, it was more like a slow transmission into China and Japan, not like a proper full-on direct transmission to Tibet. Which is why Tibet is sort of like the core of Vajrayana, like, school. Basically, there's Guru Rinpoche, or Padmasambhava, which is the lotus-born master. He also known as second Buddha, travelled to Tibet and founded Tibetan Buddhism. And he is regarded by many, and I know some people don't believe this and said this is wrong, but personally I believe he was the reincarnation of Shakyamuni, so it's Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. And he founded Tibetan Buddhism, and he taught that the tantras were the easy way to reach enlightenment in this life. And that Shakyamuni probably taught them to a few select group, like his main disciples, like Malagama. But basically, he taught this, and it would eventually turn into the Nyingma school. And I just want to address something. People might say, oh no, that's not the oldest Tibetan school. Nyingma is Bon, which is spelled B-O-N, but with the O with an umlaut. It's kind of Buddhist, but it's not really. It's got like those Buddhist teachings, but they were founded by Tompa Shenlab, who is a semi-legendary figure who is said, if it is true, it is said he was born 1,000 years before the Buddha himself. So, yeah, basically. And also they break a lot of tenets of Buddhism. Like, yes, they have the main core beliefs, and they have lots of similar deities. And yes, personally, some Tibetan Buddhists do worship boon deities, but they do believe in a creator, which is a big no-no. But basically, Tibetan Buddhism came out and has the main schools, which are Nyingma, the one that Guru Rinpoche founded, Gelug, Kagyu, and there's one of that I can't remember. There are the Sama ones. And yeah, the Sama ones are new ones. Okay, I know I've probably forgotten. Please tell me in the comments. Okay, I'm not like a professional historian or anything like that, but I do know a lot about this kind of stuff. I like to research this. It's just my thing. Okay. Basically, this would happen, and there's another Sama schools. They say new, but when I say new, I don't mean like last few hundred years. We still mean like a long time. Like one Sama school is the Jonang school, which actually I am a practitioner of, or at least partially, I would say. And they believe in Shentong. And I know it takes ages, but the thing about Anatta is that we believe that there's no self. Like, it's just, our consciousness is just a collection of dependent origin, basically. Like, yes, we do get reincarnated, but it's not really us. Like, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. I don't know how to explain it, but I do understand it. Like, I'm not, like, unqualified. But basically, Shentong, I believe, is the true way to believe it, because Shentong says that, well, it's against the Rangtong belief, which is like the more accepted belief that is practiced in Tibetan Buddhism and the other Vajrayana, which says that there is nothing, and even nothingness and nothingness. Like, you can't treat nothing as a thing. But in Shentong, we say that nothing is a thing. We don't say emptiness of everything, we say emptiness of other. There's one true thing that does exist, which is the Adi Buddha, the Dharmakaya, the thing that makes it the whole universe. And I know this sounds very heretical, but it just makes sense. I understand why Rangtong, people who believe in Rangtong believe Rangtong, but Shentong just makes more sense, because how do you become enlightened if there's no ground from enlightenment, the Ajahn Buddha? And yes, I know there's schools that believe in Rangtong, like Gelug and Nyingma. I know that they say, that Ali Buddha is just emptiness personified as a deity, but as a Buddha, but it's not really. I would say that Ali Buddha is a real thing. And also, since my beliefs are kind of ambiguous, I'm kind of Shingon, Tibetan, Jonang, I would say that I'm probably just a mixture of Jonang and the Eastern transmission, Shingon, Tendai, those kind of stuff. And yeah, and I personally actually do worship some boon deities, and I might not be pronouncing that right, but it's the B-O-N with the O with the umlaut. And Sherab Chama, also known as Satrik Irsang. Sorry, I'm not Tibetan, I might not pronounce that right. But yeah, I believe that. And basically, these are basically it, the main schools. And also, yeah, Jonang was persecuted a lot, especially by Gelug, where the Dalai Lama comes from, who's the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism. But basically, these are the main three that I've just covered. Mahayana, Theravada and Vajrayana. Vajrayana and Mahayana get along well together, because Vajrayana came from Mahayana. But I'm not saying there's bad relations, but Theravadins are a bit skeptical of Mahayanas and Vajrayanas because of the beliefs about deities and that kind of stuff. And also, one thing I like to ask is that deities in Vajrayana Buddhism aren't really proper deities. That we believe in also forces. If you jump off a cliff, gravity pulls you down. It responds and pulls you down. But you didn't ask it to, you didn't pray to, you didn't decide to, but it happened. If you pray to Avalokiteshvara Chandrazik, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and he answers your prayers, it's kind of like a force. He's not doing it on purpose. He's not saying, "Oh yeah, you, Bob, I'll bless you this." He's just not saying that. That's not how it's working. You know what I mean? But it's not just that. It is also kind of like normal deities. It's very hard to explain. It's just the Western view of self. It needs to be deconstructed. Because many Westerners, and yes, I know I am a Western Tibetan Buddhist, but I understand how it works. But some people don't understand how it works with the deities, and oh yeah, they're just symbols. They're not. Okay, they're qualities manifested. Yes, they can still bless you. They can still manifest as being that Duva mind, the Dalai Lama is Avalokiteshvara. But they also aren't deities up in the clouds. It's very complicated, but an easy way to explain it is they're forces. They just respond to your prayers, but not in a mechanical way necessarily. Because in the Shingon they say mantra and mudra, and you have to sort of tap into the frequency or force of the deities, which is how it works. But basically, I don't know how it works in Mahayana, genuinely. I think some people believe that they're actual deities in the clouds, the Bodhisattvas, and the Buddhas, but I don't think that's how this works. Because in Theravada, Bodhisattvas do exist, but they're not deified in that way. And Theravada is kind of the modern, secular, atheistic Buddhism. But there are still deities in a way, because, of course, in all Buddhism we believe that there are devas, which are kind of like the Hindu gods, but they're mortal and they live for thousands of years. But they're not pure of worship. But lots of Theravadins do worship and venerate them as saints. It's kind of like Catholics, kind of how they don't worship saints, but they pray to them. Especially in Thailand, there's a big culture around Frafrom, or Brahma, as many Hindus would know. And basically, that's it. But there also are new types of schools that have come in. All schools are either Theravada, Mahayana, or Vajrayana, but there's some that are not. Especially this the secular Buddhism, which is just Buddha showed us how to get wisdom and teach. They don't even believe in enlightenment as a thing. These are very atheistic, mainly Western people. And that's kind of outside the spectrum. It is kind of based on Theravada, but it's not Theravada. Theravada would say that's heretical. And there is Navayana, which was founded by Ambedkar, I'm not pronouncing, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, which was a big Indian political figure, and Navajan is still around today, and Ambedkar is seen as a bodhisattva by them, but this is more like Theravada based, but it's still technically not Theravada. So you could say Navajan is, but Navajan is sort of a lot more recent, and therefore it's not considered like rooted, if you know what I mean. Like not culty, but like rooted, if you know what I mean. And yeah, so that's my rambling. I know it might sound like a big rambling, but I'm not a proper YouTuber. I don't have a good budget. Just like, I know sometimes I stutter and forget about what I'm saying. I don't have a script, I'm just rambling. But please, like, watch my videos, they're still educational. Like, you know, I just like to talk about religion, and history of religion, and history itself. So, yeah, this is the Casual Historian saying bye. I'll see you next time. And also, please tell me in the comments if I get anything wrong. I'm not, like, fully qualified. Like, yeah, I know a lot, but I'm not qualified. Okay? Thanks, bye.